Hi, this is ASDP ufologist Jody Brown from Arizona, and you are watching Alien Strand Podcast with host Donald Ledesma.
AlienStrand.com, the official website.
Hi, guys. Welcome to this episode of Alien Strand Podcast. I'm your host, Don Ledesma, and welcome to today's show. You know, we were supposed to have this tomorrow, but my scheduling got kind of messed up. So my apologies, but we're going to have an excellent podcast tonight. And I hope you guys are catching us everywhere. If you catch us on YouTube, please hit a like and subscribe, man. All right, so that way you guys can catch it as we come out, even on our Facebook. Catch us on Facebook. We're on 8 platforms right now, live. I appreciate everybody that's involved with Alien Strand Podcast. It's going to be a great podcast tonight. And everybody, if you want to chime in, and I'll put your questions on. If you got any questions for him tonight, and we'll be glad to answer them. All right. So we'll be talking about Atlantis tonight. All right. But before that, I just want to welcome you guys to Alien Strand Podcast. I appreciate each and every one of you, man, and if you're new to ufology, well, welcome to ufology. Today's episode is not about ufology, but it might be in there, right? But anyway, welcome to ufology. And if you like our content, just give us a like, share our stuff anywhere you see it. Please share it. All right. So we do have another one called Patreon. All right. If you want to go to Patreon, there's some free stuff on there too, so you can actually be a member without paying the $5 a month. We got some free stuff on there. But the $5 a month are some special podcasts that I've already done. I already done 2 of them. I'll be doing another one, about another 3 a week, maybe 2 to 3 a week, and different subjects. All right. So you'll be able to catch these before anybody else sees them. Actually, nobody else will see them, but you'll only see them on Patreon. All right. And also, I'll have a lot of goodies to give away. Of course, I got my stickers. Woo, Alien Strand Podcast stickers. I got some of those. We're going to have some t-shirts to give away and everything like that. And those are for Patreon members. Okay, so if you want to be a member, please go on there, and like I said, I'll pick you out and I'll send you a shirt, I'll send you stickers, things like that. And that's our gratitude for thank you guys for being a part of Alien Strand Podcast and helping out with this tonight's podcast with Mr. Dwayne Belcher. All right, so please listen to this podcast. This is going to be a great one tonight, man. We're going to talk about Atlantis, and we're going to talk about history of it a little bit. Where he's going to give you his hypothesis, and we're going to break a lot of things down about Atlantis. I've never really touched on this subject, and this is the first time that I'm going to do it. So what a great person to do it with, Mr. Dwayne Belcher. He'll be on here in a few minutes. We'll get him on in a few minutes, but don't forget, catch our movie, The Middle. There on Amazon Prime. Don't forget, catch it there, man. $2.99. Come on, a bag of chips and a soda. That's what you pay for. Come on, you can get $2.99. Check out our documentary there. And it's a teaching documentary. It's for learning. If you're new to ufology, this will be a great way to start learning with this documentary. All right, so it's free on TV, and free on TCL channel. All right, so if you want if you don't want the commercials, Amazon Prime's the way to go, and that way you can zip right through it and watch the whole documentary. And we appreciate you. Give us a thumbs up on that as well. Now, man, the grand finale is already coming up. I've been working hard on this film, the middle two CE3. We're going to do the first episode. Is going to be coming out here in about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. So be ready for this. It's going to have three stories. Each episode, excuse me, will have three stories. So this first one's almost done already, and once I get it done, and once it's uploaded, you guys will probably see it maybe in the middle of or late November. Okay, maybe mid late, depends on Amazon Prime when they shoot it in there, and then you guys can start watching it because that's going to be the only channel it's going to be on at first. 3 months later, it'll start being on other channels. All right. So I appreciate you guys for checking that out. When it does come out, don't forget, follow us on ASDP on Twitter. How we do have a Twitter, aka Twitter. Now it's X, but you can go to Alien Strand Disclosure Project. We have a special, team there, man. You can follow us there on our group, ASDPUFO.com. If you want to go to our websites, or alienstrand.com, our sister page, check us out there. And don't forget, if you want to talk to me, if you got a hotline, if you want to get on the show, or if you just want to get something off your chest about extraterrestrials, abductions, anything that's happened to you, hit me up, 361-245-8000. Hit me a text if I don't get you back. All right. So, we try to get as much information to you guys as much as possible. If you guys are chiming in tonight, the best place to do it is going to be probably on Alien Strand, so that way I can get your names. Your names will pop up, or on YouTube, right? But if you're on a group right now, that's okay too. Don't worry about it. So, and it's gonna be great, man. So, this we got a Facebook user says, "I'm glad you had the time tonight. Tomorrow's gonna be fun." All right, so let's do this, man. Let's do this. So, without a further ado, let's get this gentleman on tonight. All right, Mr. Dwayne, let's get him on.
How are you?
Hey, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. So, me and Terry talked about you and about getting you on the show, and because you had a lot of information on Atlantis, right? And
Yep.
you have a lot of hypotheses and a lot of different things that you wanted to share and talk about. So, can you tell a little bit of my audience out there about you and about how all of this started for you with the Atlantis?
Well, my name is Dwayne Belcher. I started out doing a lot of research. I've been real big into history and science my whole life, of course, and I've researched a lot of different things, and as much as I could on Atlantis, because who isn't fascinated with that story? Um, Learned a lot of things, come across a lot of things. Was given special gifts to be able to help find things and certain people to help find it. Um, Talked to many different people, friends of mine and stuff, and they've done research with me on this, and it's kind of helped me come up with the hypothesis that I have on it.
Okay.
And of course, Terry was a big part of that too, with his help. It kind of helped approve everything for me to help be able to tell everyone, because the truth should be known.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm glad that you guys were studying it and kind of putting your hypothesis together on everything about Atlantis. I know that Atlantis, the story's been around for a while. Here's a map that was published of Atlantis in 1669 in Amsterdam, right? So this is what they had it back then. This is what they thought about. What are your thoughts on this map, or how, what they were thinking back then?
Um, well, I mean, if you look at the Gibraltar Straits, of course, they said it was right outside. They could go through the Gibraltar Straits to get to the island of Atlantis. A lot of people believe it was just a little small island, but myself, I believe it was larger than what they expected it to be. And with all the waterways and stuff they talked about and stuff, that could be like certain areas of the continent of Atlantis that uh, could be considered a lot of waterways and entranceways into the continent or the island that they called it. And certain countries have different waterways that go into the land and surround the land and different parts of the countries. And the main country that I consider it to be has a lot of those waterways and a lot of islands that are surrounded by water and that have outlets and inlets into the continent and the countries.
Why do you think that that this Plato talked about this, or
Hmm.
that it existed? I mean,
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on that?
Well, he got it. He got his information from his grandfather, from what I would understand, and then his grandfather got that information from an Egyptian king or priest, I believe it was, and they put it all together to try to create the hypothesis that they come up with of Atlantis itself. And a, a lot of thought went into that, a lot of work went into that, and a lot of people had a hand in that, of course.
Right.
And it took a long time to try to figure things out, but it's something that a lot of people really want to know about, and myself, I wanted to know about, which is why I did as much of the research as I did, and come up with a lot of different things about it. So yeah, it was very interesting to come up with the information that I come up with.
So, Marsh is asking, are the pillars of Hercules on there? As far as have you heard about that hypothesis
Um,
on?
the Pillars of Hercules, I believe it was at the Gibraltar Straits when they went through there to come out into the sea to be able to get to the island that they called Atlantis, as far as I've been told and I've researched and on the subject and stuff.
Wow. So, I mean, when y'all's when y'all put y'all's heads together and get all the research, how is it that
Mhm.
y'all come up with a certain area?
Well, because mainly because of the story of going through the Gibraltar Straits and the Pillars of Hercules and coming out, and then the continent or island being not far outside of that. Um, it led to a lot of research and trying to figure out how and where the city of Atlantis actually went after the that happened and when certain things happened. And a lot of people think that it just disappeared under the sea, which is, a lot of it probably did, but some of it, I believe, resurfaced after the main floods of the old days.
Yeah, that was my thoughts.
Mhm.
That it
Once
sank.
the waters receded, then a lot of it come back to surface. Uh, there's a lot of different things that could have happened in that time, such as when Pangea itself was one large continent, and then there was a certain country, or as you want to call it, an island that was right outside of that. And once that started to break apart and all this stuff started happening to the planet to where it all separated, well, then we had the major flood and the biblical times, and then after a while, then all the waters receded and everything come back. Things started resurfacing again when the water settled, and when it when it all settled, then we have the continent or island is back above the water, so we could actually see it again.
Wow.
I think a lot when that happened, a lot of the people, the Atlantean people, of course, the ones that could fled, of course, to try to get away from the cataclysm and the destruction that was happening and the floods, and they scattered out all across the world. And at that time, there was a one world language, which was Latin. And then it even speaks of it in the Bible that after the floods or after a certain time, then all the people spoke different languages because they were all separated from each other after Pangea happened. And that's one reason why we all speak the different languages because we all come up with our own little way of speaking to each other at that time after all that happened.
I've heard of that. of the language
Mhm.
being in Latin, back in the day.
Yes, sir. That's why a lot of the Catholic churches still use Latin. That's why a lot of your law uses Latin language, and other countries and other peoples use the Latin language. And the Spanish people are the really had the closest to Latin, if you think about it. A lot of their language is based on the Latin language, so that's kind of a big thing there. They still hold some of that history from back in the really old days.
Yeah, and it kind of it just makes you think of how they were talking back in the day, and the possibilities of the history, how everything kind of unfolds with the languages, and of course the story of Atlantis, and things like that. So your hypothesis of Atlantis is that it's around this area.
Yes, sir. It's around that area. If you look at the map on the right, um, on the left side there's a continent that actually says Atlantis on it. And you see a mountain range to the right and a mountain range to the left, and you see a big towering mountain right in the center. Well, as my hypothesis, and it shows to the left there, if you look to the left of that, the other map, it shows America. You can see it clearly, Florida and the Gulf of Mexico, and then you have Canada above it. Well, on the map to the right, you don't see Canada, but you do see America. If you look at it closely on the left side of that map, you can see Mexico, the Rio Grande, Florida. And of course, the mountain ranges would be the mountain ranges to our east and the mountain ranges to our west. And the tower in the center, I believe, would be Yellowstone before the major eruption and before the loss of the breakup of the continent and everything. And when that happened, the volcanic material flowed all over the country, all over the land, and could have created part of Canada and flowed south also because it is a super volcano. So it's a megalithic thing that happened when that erupted. So apologize, I lost audio with you. Yes, sir. But another hypothesis of mine about the people of Atlantis. They said they were a race that were very advanced. They had certain technologies that caused their destruction. It was what a lot of people think and they said. Um, During that, we hear stories of Planet X and we hear stories of the red planet, and we know that it supposedly only comes around in certain so many thousands of years. Well, my belief is that the people from that planet, which would be the Anunnaki, came to our planet and they colonized this certain place in the world, which goes along with the alien podcast. And when they colonized, they brought their technology with them and they taught the people of the world things they weren't supposed to teach. And so they were cast out of their homelands, of their masters, and they were placed here on this planet, left here on this planet to commingle with the people of the planet,
Wow.
which could have made the process of having the giant children, which we have pictures of in a lot of the pyramids all around the world. There's pictures of giants reaching up in the trees and handing fruit down to the smaller people. Um, it has the Bible actually has a lot to do with it because it tells a little bit. It kind of tells the story of how it all became to be and how it happened. Um, the Atlantean people, when all that happened, of course, they had special technology back then, so they would have been able to get away from the cataclysm and stuff easier than the people that didn't. Of course, they still had issues with a lot of the people probably died at that time, but some of them got away. And then if you look at Thoth, and the Emerald Tablets and Hermes, um, then you see the story he tells about the Atlanteans. He was an Atlantean, and he traveled to the east and began to make a new world, for the people and for himself.
Can you hear me again?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, Marcia says, does Lemuria and Atlantis have a connection?
There is a possibility of that. I mean, as I said, during Pangea, all the continents were connected, so they would have been really close together. They would have shared. I'm sure they shared a lot of the technology, which is why we have pyramids all over the world, not just in Egypt, not just in our country or in South America, but there's also in China. They're all over the world. They're not just in one continent. And the reason they had that, um, they set them at certain ley lines, like Mr. Terry said.
Right.
Um, his lines kind of matched up with my hypothesis of Atlantis being Atlantis or America being Atlantis. And they um, they just they it's all intertwined with each other. All the continents were together, so they just built it all over the whole world. At the time, it was just one large continent, basically, and they used that to for power, electricity. They harness the power, of the universe, of our planet, to create the power they needed. There's even pictures in the pyramids that what looks like a huge light bulb that they
Right.
used, and there's no soot marks inside there to show that they had fire in there. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
that kind of goes along with it. They use that power, and of course, Nikola Tesla, he figured that out, and he started making his Tesla coils to harness that electricity from the atmosphere and use it for power instead of having to use generators, water, and all that stuff. Of course, the people of this world now, they're so money hungry, they don't want you to know that because they can gain finance off of creating and generating power for you. So,
Well, yeah. I mean, look what happened to the guy too that invented the car that ran on water
right, right, right. And
before he.
there's also people that used magnetic energy and batteries to create electricity, and they've tried to silence them. Of course, they don't want anybody to know the truth, because when you know the truth, then you you are not dumbed down to what they believe, what they want you to believe.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about those grids earlier before we came on, and because of what
Mhm.
Terry had said about those things, and I think
Yes.
like you said, everything connects some kind of way. It's the Earth has energy, and then they use these grids to connect as well. So, I mean, and that's your belief too, right? As well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They use the magnetic field itself, to harness, that was the energy that flows around our planet. So they just harnessed that electricity, that power, to create the power they needed to run the automobiles or the spacecraft or whatever you want to call it that they used at the time, and to use for the power to for whatever they needed it for during that time. It is electricity, whatever they wanted. They also have clay pots with copper rods in it. They used orange juice to make batteries to be able to carry around and to have use for power also. So
Wow. I mean, it's if you really think about it, kind of like it's crazy how their technology was still up there with ours, even though they didn't have the wires or the microchips that we have
yes, sir.
now. They were able to conduct electricity, all kinds of different things, astronomy, things like that. Nowadays.
Hmm.
I mean, in your personal opinion, what really got you pulled into Atlantis? In your personal opinion,
Well, I'd always heard the stories, that a lot of different people tell about it. I read some of Plato's work, and Plato himself wrote the 51 Clues of Plato. Um, And when he wrote that, a lot of people thought it was just a little story he was trying to tell, but he was actually telling a story that he had heard from people from the past. And
mm,
he just wanted to relay that message to the other people of the world and keep it going so that people actually knew the history of what happened to the planet and to the people instead of just saying and not just being a story. And with the 51 clues of Plato, I think it's kind of funny that they named it Area 51
Right.
in this country. You know what I'm saying? And of course, I'm sure that's where they found a lot of that technology. And since the 50s, early 50s, when they claimed Roswell, we've come up with more technology since that time than we have since any time before. So, and then even Bill Clinton accidentally slipped up doing a show on one of the night shows and said that they used that area for cloaking technologies. But, I think it's more than just the cloaking technologies.
Of course, of course. I mean, we all see these strange things in the sky now that we don't. They almost look human made just by the
Yes, sir.
shapes and the
Right.
way they
The
fly.
boomerang shapes. Yeah, the circular
Hmm.
shapes. And there's all kinds of videos out there that anybody can watch about the government, the Air Force actually having craft that look circular in shape and that can hover and that are silent and maneuver in certain ways that normal aircraft can't. And then they come up with the cloaking technologies and the radar deflecting technologies. Well, where do you think they come up with that stuff? It was from the people that was already here. They just found it and they started reverse engineering everything so that
Exactly.
they could bring it into play in our future, in our time. So,
What I mean, what made the your your theory? What made Atlantis sink? Well, made it disappear?
made it disappear. Well, the continental shifts, we have every so often our planet does a pole reversal. A lot of people already know about that. A lot of people don't. During that pole reversal, kind of like a lot of things that are happening now with the planet, the magnetic north is no longer magnetic north. Now it's in Russia. So
Right.
it's slowly moving. It's slowly starting to flip. And when that happens, of course, we're going to have a lot of earthquakes. Excuse me, a
Mhm.
lot of earthquakes, a lot of volcano eruptions, and as it gets farther down, it's just going to get worse. Um, uh, the more it goes, the farther it flips, it's just going to create more of that. And when all that happened, it just broke the whole continents apart, which we was why we're all separated now on different continents instead of all being together like Pangea. Um, it just it caused the floods, it caused the waters to rise, and there's always been I've heard stories about the waters um, coming up from the middle of the earth being pushed out because of the volcanic activity and the heat and just pushing all that water out, which could have made more floods. And with those volcanoes erupting in the waters, of course, that would have made steam and caused a lot of rain for 40 days or 40 nights, which even in that story, um, it might have rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but it was over 150 days before they actually come to land because they had to wait for the waters to recede after the flood.
Right. Young and dry event. So I mean, because it says here now Plato's his the way he spoke about it was 9,000 years before this time. So
Yeah.
if you think about it, it's right at 12,000 years when the Younger Dryas happened, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
and yeah, with the floods and cataclysmic stuff, it went to the bottom of the ocean or wherever it was at. What they were
Hmm.
thinking, but your hypothesis is
Yeah. Well, I believe it did sink in. The floods did cause it to sink into the waters, or what they called sinking into the waters. And when the continents broke apart, of course, it pushed the continental shifts and the plates shifted everything. So it pushed the continents farther apart from each other. And if they would have went underwater at that time, once it started to push back up and another shift happened, then it could have pushed it back up above sea level and the waters would have receded, and then we could have had the continent of America, as we call it now.
right. Because of the what you showed the photo of where you think the photo that they had was a part
Mhm.
of. Now the photo that you're showing here,
Yes, sir.
when was that photo put
I'm not sure the specific date. It was a depiction from Plato for the
together? Okay,
Paleolithic period. So, I mean, during the Paleolithic times, I guess, is when they would probably made this map
right.
and to show that Atlantis was Atlantis, but it just wasn't. didn't look the same as it does now because after that eruption of the volcano, as we know of Yellowstone, because it is a super volcano, and that in itself could have been a cataclysm that caused massive damage to the whole world, which is another reason why we don't see all the stuff that they had from Atlantis, because then it would have been called what they call the mud floods, would have
Right.
covered a lot of the stuff up, and then the volcanic activity from that eruption would have covered up a lot of the other technology and stuff that they would have found at that time. That's why Area 51 is so deep into, deep into the ground, because they had to get past all that to find it.
And S4 and all the different places that are underground,
Yes,
where
sir.
and I mean, why dig? I Why dig all the way across the United States? Make these tunnels. Why? I mean, they're just and hiding stuff, right?
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and you would think that in your hypothesis, if because of the map, the way it looks, if it was because at the very bottom it's got the little pitch, like Texas.
hmm hmm
If
I believe that is Mexico.
or
The
Mexico,
bottom part of the map on the right there, I believe that's Mexico. And then if you look at the little squiggly lines that go between it and up at the top part there, that would be like the Rio Grande, where it
okay,
separates the
right,
continent Mexico from America.
right.
And then to the little point sticking out on the right there would have been like Florida's Panhandle. It just the way it looks in that picture, it shows it curving more to the right when it's actually flows down more to the south.
And it
They
does have
they just
similar. If you really look at it, it does have a lot of similarities.
Yes,
Um,
sir. And like I was saying, with the mountain ranges it shows in that map to the east and to the west, that would have been, the Rockies and the Smoky Mountains and everything. So it just kind of shows you right there. And the only thing that you could really look at on that map that you wouldn't see in America would be of course, the tower in the middle, which would be Yellowstone after it erupted and collapsed down into the cavity of the earth, which is why we have all the hot springs and all that stuff around that area.
you know what that kind of looks like?
What's that?
Devil's Tower.
It could be. Some people call it the Tower of Babel. Some people
Mhm.
do. In that time, they could have built something on that. And during those days, they worshiped the sun a lot. Of course, as you can tell from the Egyptians, you see the circle on top of their heads and stuff where they worship the sun. And of course, volcanic activity would be considered like a plasma from the sun and during those days. They would have used it for heat. They would have used it for many different things that they could have used it for during that time, or even power.
Right.
So, yeah, I think they probably used that tower or that volcano for a lot of different reasons and would have probably lived there around that area, I'm sure.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense what you're saying there. I can see it,
hmm
just by the photo. Hey, let's take a really quick commercial break, about 30 seconds, and we'll be right back in just a minute. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Power. Power.
All right, guys, welcome back. So these are some possible locations of Atlantis. Have you seen this map before?
This map, no, sir, I haven't seen that map. Which I could see the yellow dots near America there, uh, near the Gulf of Mexico, and that could be correct. I mean, it could be part of it. I've heard stories of crystal pyramids being in the Bermuda Triangle, which causes that problem they have with their instruments to cause them to get off and to lose their way. I believe that. I can believe that because why not? Crystals hold power. They put them in your phones. They put them in a lot of different things because it'll hold memory. It'll create it's a good conductor for the charges.
Right.
They use a lot of gold in those and a lot of those things, TVs and phones and stuff. So why not take that gold too, right? I mean,
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it says, they from Northwest Egypt, Greece to Spain, northeast of Egypt, around the Gibraltar, of course, we were talking about that earlier, Northwest Africa, Atlantic Ocean, Atlantic Ocean North and West, Americas, see, there it is, Americas, uh,
right.
Antarctica, and North Pole. Remember, Antarctica was back then it wasn't frozen solid; it was the actual landmass.
Hmm.
You know,
Yes.
so I mean, where where did Plato actually get this from? Right, you said from his father, correct?
I think he was told from the stories I've heard, he was told by his father and his grandfather, the stories of Atlantis, who had heard those stories from an Egyptian priest, I believe it was, is the story that I heard. And he had told him the story of the people of Atlantis and um, where they came from, how the cataclysms happened, how they disappeared into the sea, and that's where he got his stories, and that's where he come up with his locations from. And like I was saying before, when you go through the Gibraltar Straits during Pangea, the first continent that would have been there would have been America, as we know it as America, but it would have been Atlantis at that time.
Right.
Um, of course, a lot of people in this country wouldn't want you to know that because they don't want you to know the history. A lot of people in the world wouldn't want you to know that because they don't want you to know the true history. Because those who win wars create history. So,
Here we have it's an old map, 1882. They were thought of Atlantean Empire. In other words, this is what the
mhm.
Atlanteans uh, conquered back in the back. This is what they were thinking.
Yes, sir. And if you look at the wide areas there in the European side, a lot of the Atlantean people went to the area like where the Basque people are, to Egypt. They went all over. When all that happened, they scattered to the east where it was still above water and the continents were still pretty much together for everything when everything started to separate. And if you look at South America and you look at Africa right there, it looks
Right.
like it could have been together at one time before it broke apart. And then there's a lot
Right.
of stories going around now about Africa being split in half by earthquakes. Well, that kind of goes along, it kind of tells the tale right there that it just broke apart and just shifted. Everything shifted and it kind of separated from each other. And if that would have happened, then of course, we would have ended up, or this continent would have ended up somewhere else besides right there beside them, just outside the Gibraltar Straits.
Yeah, I mean, that's how they depicted it here. I mean, that's what they thought of what it looked like back, before our time or before anybody's time.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, this map came out in 1882. Of course,
Mhm.
we had mapped out a lot of the continents before that, so maybe this was their hypothesis, what
Well,
possibly.
that little small island that you see between the Americas and the European area,
Right,
um, it could have been there at one time. I mean, it could have been a part of all of it before it broke apart. That could be the piece that's missing from down in the Gulf of Mexico. That could be
right.
the part of it that was left behind during that shift. And of course, now we don't see it now because it probably sunk. Um, but during Pangea, we were all connected. All the continents were connected. That's why the people were all over and they all spoke the same language because yeah, why would have a different language when you're all right there together, right? You could all speak to each other with the same language.
Yeah, I mean, if you kind of think about it that way, but so we're kind of thinking of 13,000 ago that Atlantean people existed like an empire, like the Greeks, right? Or
Yes, sir.
back in
Well,
the
they were
day.
a sea-bearing people. They were sea-bearing people, and of course, being a sea-bearing people, we don't just have waters below, we have waters above. So they could have been in the sea above and the sea below because what is above is below. So, I mean, and there's even, if you look at some of the paintings from the old days during the Christ era and Mary Magdalene, there's even paintings of UFOs above them with lights shining down. There's also pictures of circular crafts or cigar-shaped crafts fighting each other in the skies. So they would have, if they would have had a war during that time, then of course, they would have been fighting in the skies. So there tells that tale about that technology they had that they're trying to reverse engineer now, and they have a lot of it, I'm sure. Um, they don't want you to know it, because if you know it, then just like being an alien podcast, they don't want
Right.
you to know this stuff, because once you know it, then they can't say, well, oh, it's from this other world. But then you see stories, you have videos out there of army people talking to what looks like gray aliens, and then those gray aliens are talking to the army people, and they ask them, where do you come from? He says, I come from Earth. He's like, you
Right.
can't come from Earth. You're not you don't look like us. You're not like us. He said, well, to travel through space is to travel through time.
Right. Like through the wormholes, like we always talk about. Um,
Right.
um, I was going to ask. Okay, so I mean, remember, you know how a lot of folks, because I'm not very, I don't know very much about Atlantis, but only what I see and what I read here and there, right? So,
Yeah.
why do you think that we got the ideas of Atlantis as people like mermaids, Poseidon, things like that, where they got these
Mhm.
images of people being that way in Atlantis?
Well, during those days, we had dinosaurs. We had all kinds of different creatures, and there's even paintings of the mermaids and of unicorns and different stuff like that. So we actually, those creatures were actually here. They were here on this planet at that time. A lot of them were killed off, kind of like made extinct, just like the dinosaurs, um, because a lot of them they probably used for food. They used them for, like we do, for horses to plow fields, to do this, to do that, other things. Um, they would have used those things. And if we do still have mermaids, do you think they would show themselves to us now, knowing what they know about how people are? They're going to hide. They're not going to show themselves. They
Yeah.
may to some people out on the seas, but only very few. And if they're lucky enough to see them.
Well, look at Bigfoot.
Right. Look at Bigfoot. He's been spotted all over, and I'm sure there's not just one. There's multiple, of course. And not to say that there's not underwater cities and stuff. I know there is. I'm sure there is, where certain places have sunk into the sea and it's still there. We
Right.
actually have pictures of underwater pyramids and this and that and different stuff. So yeah, it's a possibility. There's no denying that whatsoever.
Well, the city of Thanos, right? Wasn't it the one in Egypt
Hmm.
that sunk down?
Hmm. Yes,
So,
sir.
I mean, and that's there as well. I mean, and let's talk about that real quick. Not Thanos, but just the possibilities of why this was a possible location for the island of the pharaohs. That's what that was called before this cataclysmic event happened.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
Uh, it's a very large. It was a very large island, from what I understand. But I believe at one time it was a volcano. That's why the circular center part, once it erupted so much, kind of like Yellowstone, it collapsed down because it was so towering, and of course flooded with water. Just like
Right.
over in Greece, you have the island there that they claimed to be Atlantis. That was a volcano. And a lot of people probably believe that, because I would say that the Atlanteans used the volcanoes to their advantage. Like I said, for heat, for this, for that, for anything, building materials, all sorts of different things.
Right. Well, if you kind of look at that shape of the water, of just the shape of the way it looks with the blue, doesn't
Hmm.
it look like the face of an Aztec person, that the one that was in the rocket ship?
Hmm.
The
Yes, sir. And see,
the
that's another thing. You see in the pyramids, you see that a lot. You
right,
see where it looks like there's someone in a spaceship, They've got certain things to help them breathe, apparatus, and to help them. And it shows them laying back. It don't just show them laying forward. So they're taking off. They're going up into the space, to the air.
Right.
And you hear the stories of Aladdin's magic carpet that flies. Well, it wasn't just a magic carpet. It was an actual ship that he flew
The
in
ship.
to get from place to place. And
Right.
if anybody or you have ever read anything about the Dead Sea Scrolls, of course, there's stories in there where a certain person was taken up in the ship with the gods, and he's seen the earth from the heavens. Well,
Right.
how did he get there? During those days and those times, how did he get there? He was showing him the world from above.
Right. I think that
So,
was that Solomon or something like that? I think so.
uh,
I'm not sure.
no, sir, it was Noah's grandfather,
Oh, Enoch.
Enoch, and his name is in the Bible, of course,
Right.
as Noah's grandfather. And in the book of Enoch, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, he says about seeing the earth from above, from the heavens, and
Right.
speaking to God, and he couldn't look upon God because God was so bright.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah. Now I remember
mhm.
where I saw it.
And
And I just
yes,
talked about it not too long ago.
yes,
So
sir.
Marsha's asking, have you read Edgar Casey's take on Atlantis?
No, I have not. I have not read that one. That's something I would like to read though, because I'm all about that. Learning anything I can about Atlantis or any other history things, science things. I love it all. So,
So do you kind of like in your on your time is do you kind of like eat, breathe, live, breathe Atlantis, or you just kind of touch? It's just like one of your favorite subjects,
it's one of my favorite subjects. History itself is my favorite subject. Anything to know with history, because I've always been told that the history repeats itself. So my theory is, if you know history, then you know the future, basically.
right?
Yeah, because if history repeats itself, then it's going to happen again. So if you know what's going to happen in the past, then you know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, we all been kind of predicting that just by just the feeling that we get in our fingertips or our dreams, that we have. Just everybody's kind of on the edge right now. It's kind of weird what's
Yes,
happening
sir.
in our world and our society today. It's crazy, but Atlantis is a very cool subject, I believe, and I hope one day that we do find it, and I hope one day that you get closer to what you're looking for. As far as
Yes, sir.
like, you never know, man. Somebody might bring out
Well,
a map.
one thing I have for proof of that, it shows that tower of in Atlantis of Yellowstone, what I believe it is, the volcano in the center there. Um, there's actually stones that are found in northwestern, or excuse me, southwestern America and northwestern Mexico that are only found in those areas, and they're caused by volcanic activity, and that's
Right.
fire agate. And what else place has a volcano that size that could have made something that far south when there's no other volcanoes in this country, basically?
Right.
So that's kind of a little bit of more proof there. I actually have fire agate ring that's been handed down to me from my family, and that kind of got me looking into things about that, and that's how I figured that out. I was like, well, I need to research this and figure it out where does this come from. So I figured, look into that. Well, it's only found in southwestern United States and northwestern Mexico. It's the only place it's found, and
And
so that kind of
that's
shows that there was an eruption here. So
right. Well, I mean, we were there in Paulina Beach there in Oregon, and it's got nothing but that that material up there from eruptions,
yes,
and
sir.
you could tell there was a bunch of eruptions on that side of the western side of the United States. Um,
Yes, sir.
and it's
And I
it's
believe
crazy.
that's why. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Right.
That's why that the Baltic Sea, I mean, the up in Michigan, you have all the seas up there, the lakes up there are salt water because when that eruption happened, it just flowed around that and it left that water there. It trapped that water there. That's why it's salt
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I mean those are huge.
water. Yes, sir. It just basically flowed around it and trapped that water there. So, and that's why it flows like the oceans because it actually is part of the ocean.
Wow. Marsha's saying that book was, from a famous psychic that died in 1945. So maybe they had something
Mhm.
about that story as well there. Thank you, Marsha.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
Thank you.
So, I mean, have you found any other good stuff on Atlantis, or you're still kind of searching?
I'm always searching. I'm always looking into things. This was a big one here, finding this and putting that two to two together and trying to figure that out. Which is why I want to put it out there because I believe that the people should know the truth. If we actually live on Atlantis, the continent of Atlantis, then the people should know it. It shouldn't be hidden from us, anybody in the world. And of course, we could have called the whole Pangea Atlantis at one time before it all cracked apart. So the whole continent, the whole world could be Atlantis. But in this actual picture here, it shows the name Atlantis on our continent, on the continent that looks like America before the eruption of the volcano.
Wow. Well, I mean, you gave us some major information here, and thank you for being on our show today. It was, I mean, you opened up my eyes.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be here to tell the people because, like I said, the people should know.
Exactly. I mean,
And
I know we
if
have
somebody
some.
can come up with something better, I'd be happy to hear it.
Hey, guess what? Maybe if we have some time, maybe tomorrow somewhere or during the week, we will actually we'll have another conversation between you and I. I'm gonna try to fix this echo crap that's happening right now
Yes,
because
sir.
I can hear it. Um, I hate to cut it short, but this was a great show and a lot of information you gave us, and I really appreciate you, Dwayne, for being on the show today. It was my pleasure for having you on the show, and I want to get you back on for sure, so that way
Yes,
we
sir.
can talk a little bit more about it and we can dig a little bit deeper.
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to. I'd love to.
Where
And
can
thank you for
people?
having me.
Yes, sir. Where can people find you?
I'm on TikTok under D Murden. I'm on Facebook under Dwayne Belcher. Uh, I'm on those two platforms. I'm on Instagram as D Murden. I don't get on a whole lot of platforms, but I do get on some. And with the ones I do get on, I post things on there. I don't post a lot of things on there because um, certain people don't want you to know the truth. So, and they kind of block you there. I had it on YouTube. It was kicked off there.
I
So,
know.
you know what I'm saying there. They kind of shadow ban you on certain things. So, and that kind of tells me right there that, I'm onto something. So,
That's what's happening to us with the ufology community right now. We're getting hit all different directions from different platforms. Are kind of shutting us down on our actual videos, not videos like this, but real videos that
mhm.
we're showing of a real craft, real UFOs in the sky. Uh, Let me ask you this one question:
Yeah.
You ever seen a UFO?
Uh, I don't believe I've seen a UFO. I have seen a blue orb that was kind of see-through before. It was really surprising. It scared the crap out of me. I'm not gonna lie, because I was driving down the road real early in the morning between like 4:30 and 5, and I was passing this field that was a cow pasture,
Uh-huh.
and I looked over and I seen it kind of just sitting there, and I let off the gas and I looked back over and it was like it was moving. And then I hit the brakes real quick and I looked over and it was in my window.
Oh
And
wow!
before I could even say, what the heck, it shot straight up in the air and was gone.
Oh wow!
But it was a blue orb looking, and it was kind of, it looked like you could see through it
Like a
almost.
plasma ball.
Yes, sir.
Wow! Wow! Well, that was probably amazing to see. It would have been awesome.
It was kind of scary a little bit because I was going at a decent speed and it caught up to me and like that. It was so quick and everything. Yeah.
Wow, it's what we call drones out there too for the UFO community. Where these
Mhm.
things kind of shoot out these little spheres everywhere. Of course, they're silver.
Mhm.
Have seen the plasma ball that
Mhm.
we have on video. We're going to show it on one of our films. But thank you, Dwayne, for being on the show today. I really appreciate you. Thank you for telling this story. It was a great story. And hopefully, like I said, we'll get you on the next one. And that way we can have some a little bit deeper conversation and talk a little bit more about Atlantis.
Yes, sir. It sounds great. I would love to. And thank you very much for having me on the show.
Yes, sir. All right, brother. Well, we'll talk to you here soon.
Yes, sir. You have a good evening.
You too. All right, guys, I'm getting some kind of echo on my mic here. I don't know what's happening, but oh, I guess it went away. Well, thank you guys for listening to the show today. I really appreciate that. And it was great. Even though I tried not to talk too much because I wanted you guys to hear his version of everything he had to say and everything this he has to know because he's the most knowledgeable person about this. About Atlantis and all the continents, and it made sense. It made a lot of sense to the pictures that we showed. That it could be America's. It could be here, you know. And it's up to us to find more folks like Dwayne here and and to pick their brains so that way that way we can get more information about these things because everything kind of ties together if you really think about it, right? So just like we talked about the grid lines or Earth's energy, the pyramids, like he was talking about, everything comes together, right? And it comes in a line. So and with the energy, and then they made the light bulbs. And why not Atlantis be here in North America? Why not it be here? It's a possibility, and it's a strong possibility. So, but I'm glad you guys were watching today's show. Please excuse the echo, but hopefully we'll get it fixed up. It's something glitched. I don't know what happened, but anyway, it was a good show. I learned a lot, and I hope you guys learned a lot too. So until then, you guys have yourselves a good day. Have yourselves a good evening, and have yourselves a good night.
Hi everyone, this is ASDP UFOologist Paul Welburn from North Yorkshire in the UK, and you're watching the Alien Strand podcast with your amazing host Donald Ledesma.